Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. This is video number 8 in our series on the Olivet Discourse. We are spending time examining the questions and the subjects of the disciples' questions in Matthew chapter 24. Jesus had predicted the fall of Jerusalem, Matthew 23, 37, 38. The disciples immediately asked, when Jesus said, "Not one stone shall be left standing on top of another," Matthew 24. "Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Well, once again, the great majority of commentators just simply take it for granted that the disciples were, of course, asking about the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, but they were also asking about Jesus' literal, physical, bodily coming at the end of the current Christian age. Now, we're going to have a lot to say about the end of the age later on, so just be patient and hang on. We're going to have a great deal to say about the Greek word parousia, so be patient and hang on. I shared with you yesterday about how Jesus said, and we're asking the question, okay, what had the disciples heard Jesus say about the nature of his coming in his teaching prior to Matthew chapter 24. We've already seen that he unequivocally posited it in that generation. Oh, by the way, notice Matthew chapter 12, where Jesus said, Tyre and Sidon, Chorazin, Bethsaida would rise up in the judgment with this generation. When would the judgment be? This generation. So if Jesus' coming is at the time of the judgment, and Jesus said Tyre and Sidon, Sodom and Gomorrah, would rise up with that generation in the judgment, then if Israel was judged in that generation, that means that Sodom and Gomorrah were judged in that generation. So one more time, you have unequivocal declaration that Jesus' coming in judgment was to be in that generation. But it is often argued, well, look, you bring up, Preston, you bring up Matthew 16, 27, 28. Well, it's true that Jesus said the Son of Man was coming in the glory of his Father with his angels, and some of them standing there would not taste of death until they saw him coming. But what that means is, all you got to do is look down in Matthew chapter 17, and you find the Transfiguration. And the Transfiguration was a vision of Jesus' second coming. Matthew chapter 17 and verse 10 makes it very clear that what they saw on the mount was a vision. Now look, it doesn't mean it wasn't real. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not hinting at that. I'm not implying that. It says it was a vision. But here's the question. Is Matthew chapter 17 and the Transfiguration, is it the fulfillment of Jesus' prediction to come with the angels in judgment and in reward before all those people died? It just doesn't work. Notice, according to Mark chapter 8 and 9, it wasn't just the apostles standing there. There was actually a great multitude gathered around Jesus to hear him teach. So we're supposed to believe that Jesus is surrounded by a great multitude, and he says some of this audience will not die in the next 7 days. Only some of them. Now look, the language demands that the majority would die before this coming that he is talking about took place. But you see, it doesn't work. Jesus was not predicting the death of the majority of that great audience that was gathered around him. That doesn't even make good nonsense. Secondly, when we look at the language of the parallel passage of Mark chapter 8, 38, 9, 1, there's something in the Greek that becomes abundantly clear. Now remember, Matthew 16, 27, 28, and Mark 8, 38, Mark 9, 1, and boy, the chapter division there is incredibly unfortunate. Anyway, in these parallel passages, we have the exact same prediction. Jesus is coming in the glory of the Father in judgment. Well, you know, Matthew 16, 27, 28, or verse 28 says, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see it happening, until they see it come, until they see Him come. Well, you know, Mark 9:1 puts a little stronger emphasis on it. The Greek, the actual Greek of the text of Mark 9:1 says, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see the kingdom of God having had come. In other words, they would live until the time of Christ's coming. They would live through the time of Christ coming in judgment, and they would look back and realize He had come in judgment. Now, does that work in identifying the Transfiguration as the time of His coming? Now remember, Matthew 16, 27, 28, Mark 8, etc. is directly parallel with Matthew 24, 29 to 31. And by the way, in Mark and Luke and Matthew, this coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory with the angels in judgment is after the Transfiguration. And yet Jesus said, quote, this generation will not pass until all of these things are fulfilled, unquote, Matthew 24, 34. So obviously it hadn't been fulfilled at the Transfiguration. But that doesn't mean that the Transfiguration was not a vision of His second coming. I accept that, by the way. But guess what? The Transfiguration, first of all, is one of my very, very, very favorite subjects of all time. Secondly, the Transfiguration is not in any sense whatsoever a vision of Christ coming as a 5'5" Jewish man in a physical body at the end of the Christian age. Do you catch the power of that? What do we have on the Mountain of Transfiguration? Well, we have Jesus transfigured. He no longer appears as a 5'5" Jewish man. He is appearing in the effulgent glory of the Father, of God. He's not looking like the same Jesus that they have walked and talked with for the last 3.5 years. They are scared out of their minds at the way He looks. His face shines like the sun. But as He is there, Moses and Elijah appear with Him. And Peter says, Lord, it's fantastic to be here. Let's build 3 tabernacles. One for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for you. Indicating obviously that in Peter's mind, they were all equal. Oh, but wait. As Jesus was talking to Moses and Elijah, and as Peter uttered his words, Moses and Elijah disappeared, and the voice from heaven said, that Both Kol said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Him, here, it's in the emphatic in the Greek, which means you're supposed to hear Him. He's the one that you will listen to. What's the point? The point is, the Transfiguration was a vision of the passing of the Old Covenant law and prophets. It was not a vision of the end of the Christian age. Let me repeat that. You've got to catch the power of it. The Transfiguration was a vision of the second coming. By the way, Peter agreed with that, 2 Peter chapter 1, 19 and following. So, the Transfiguration was a vision of the second coming. But the Transfiguration was a vision of the end of Moses, the law, and the prophets. Therefore, the second coming would be at the end of Moses, the law, and the prophets. And folks, that did not end at the Transfiguration scene. If you admit that the Transfiguration is a vision of the second coming, and yet you put that second coming in our future, then by all logical necessity, Moses, the law, and the prophets do not pass away until the so-called end of the Christian age. Wait a minute, I thought it's supposed to be the end of the Christian age, not the end of Moses, the law, and the prophets. Do you see the problem here? Look, as I suggested, the Transfiguration is one of my very favorite subjects. I've written on it extensively in this very book, Like Father, Like Son, on Clouds of Glory. You will be absolutely amazed at how the Transfiguration permeates the New Testament text and the implications of that for understanding Matthew chapter 24. Because keep in mind, Transfiguration is a vision of the second coming. Matthew 24, the second coming predicted. But the Transfiguration is a vision of the end of Moses, the law, and the prophets. You know, that is the historical view of the Transfiguration. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and order this book. Be sure to send me a note saying you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. Well, don't forget, tomorrow we will continue our response and refutation of Brock Hollett's book, Debunking Preterism. We're still focused on Matthew 24 and 25, and Brock Hollett's amazingly bad comments on the Olivet Discourse. You don't want to miss it, so I'll see you there.